workshop of February 11th, and please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first item is a review of proposals in reference to the acquisition of Martel School. Do we have, do you want to just do a quick update on?
Yes, I can do a very quick update. As you know, the school department is no longer using Martel School and returned it to the city in October. We then put together a request for proposal after some discussions with the city council as to what they were looking for, or what kind of interests they had, or what kind of priorities they had when it came to elements of the property. Put out a request for proposal that required the proposers to give us a clear outline of what they intended to do with the property, indicating what their intentions were in regard to the existing buildings, specifying whether the proposal could be accommodated on a portion of the property or all of it, because there was some interest on the part of the council in potentially retaining the green space and playground behind the existing school building, asking for a proposed schedule for reuse to redevelopment, supporting the documentation on financial feasibility, and how much they were willing to pay the city for the property. As noted, the council had two what I would say non-requirement interests, preferences. One was retaining the open space, and the second was if it possibly retaining at least the facade or the original historic school building on the property. We received three proposals, one from Dave Gendron, one from Lewiston Housing Vesta Corporation, and one from the Sheriff Center. And they've been invited tonight to come and make a presentation. We can go right through the list as I presented it on the summary memo, and the first one was from Dave Gendron.
Okay. So for the record, everyone will have approximately 15 minutes for their presentation, and then we'll go over to questions from the council. 10 to 15 minutes, if we could try to keep it in that area. There'll be no public comment period during this workshop. At some point, probably the next meeting, we'll be voting on this. Is that correct?
That's the current plan, is to have something on the agenda on February 18th.
Okay, and at that point, we would have public comment period, okay, folks? So representatives of Gendron, you're welcome to come on up to the front of the room. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Chris Pazik. I'm a partner with the Bolus Company, and I'm here tonight on behalf of David Gendron and helped him put together the proposal that you are considering this evening. So I don't have a razzle-dazzle presentation for you. Hopefully you are. However, I can speak a little bit about what our game plan is for the parcel. Just as background for viewers who might not know, David Gendron's a developer in the community of Lewiston. He's developed a number of industrial and commercial buildings throughout the city, and he is currently redeveloping the former Promenade Mall at 855 Lisbon Street across the street from the subject property, and that's how we became interested in the property. We've been speaking with a number of potential customers for the corners where the former Tim Hortons and the where the former Mobil station is. And without getting into too much of the detail, those corners are limited in what we can do there because of topography and because of size. We have been speaking with customers who would have serious interest in going on the Martel School site. So we've been working through that process. I'm not at liberty to divulge who those customers are, but I can say that they are national credit tenants who we would be developing the corner for commercial use. So, and if we get further down, we can get into the, further into the specifics of that. But our game plan was to demolish all the buildings on site and to get it ready for redevelopment for commercial use.
Okay. Councilor Joy.
That would also include the green space in the back, what they have there that's open.
The site is large enough where, yes, our plan was to incorporate that green space into the commercial redevelopment.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from councilors? Councilor Jensen.
How soon would you imagine any kind of development taking shape? Would there be any extended wait period before that happened?
No, we talked about, we would actually start demo on the buildings as soon as we're able to, and the hope is probably, certainly by 2021, that there would be development actually occurring on the site.
So you think one of your potentials would actually come to fruition?
We would move pretty quickly, yes.
Councilor Khalid.
Quick question. So how many I know you can't go into detail, but so how many customers or tenants that do you think that building will?
So the site could actually accommodate probably up to 2, maybe potentially 3 tenants, but what we're envisioning, there would be one main driver for that, and then there might be some ancillary multi-tenanted nature to the site, but really it would be 1, potentially 2 commercial uses on that site, so.
I mean, could you rule out a gas station there, or there nothing could be ruled out?
Well, our bid is there is some potential for that. That is not the customer that we are talking with, right? In other words, we would not be open to any sort of restrictions on the site. We would need the ability to have maximum flexibility in who we are able to put on the site.
Okay, very good, thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Clement?
Mayor, thank you. I notice you have several contingencies on your proposal. First of all, the price is subject to a reduction of assessed value of the property. Things such as stormwater fees, to purchaser's satisfaction, redevelopment will require zoning change. Can you address those issues for me?
Sure. As far as the assessed value, does anyone know the assessed value off the top of their head? It's a couple $1 million on 1.7 million. And right now, the site is not generating any income whatsoever. Typically, what we've found is former government uses on sites tend to have high assessments when they're changed into commercial uses. And what we need to ensure is from day one, let's just say we purchase this tomorrow, the assessment, we'd be being taxed, and we would have stormwater fees on $1.7 million for the site that we would have acquired for $400,000. That just doesn't make business sense for my client.
Do you have any idea as to what you'd be looking for a reduction?
I think somewhere right around the purchase price. We think that that's, right now, in its current state, that is what the property is worth, is the $400,000 that we've offered. And especially once we spend a couple $100,000 demoing the buildings, that we feel is the fair value that we should be taxed on and have stormwater fees for.
Councilor Jelinas, do you have something?
Yeah, you understand we have like 3 proposals, and I think the thing that I'm struggling with is, 2 of them are really clear to me. Like, I know what they are, I know what they're purposing to do, I understand that. And I guess this is just vague. I mean, kind of like we were saying, Mr. Mayor, there's something you can rule out. It's hard not really knowing. I mean, that's a pretty nebulous term, right? Commercial use, it's pretty broad. I mean, I, too, was wondering, like, could it be another Burger King? Is it, a gas station? I mean, you just kind of wonder, right? So that's what I'm struggling with.
Sure, and I understand. We're trying to cram a square peg in a round hole here through this process. Unfortunately, sometimes these processes are and we understand it's a public process, and we're trying to be as forthright as we can, given the public nature of this process. So I wish I could give you more detail right now, but
Could you remind us how stormwater fees are calculated? I don't believe it's based on assessed value, right?
That's correct. It's based upon impervious surface and runoff, and whether there's any kind of stormwater mitigation system on the parcel.
Is that helpful?
I don't know what the stormwater fees are gonna be on it, but I do know that there is a lot of impervious surface on this site, and that is of primary concern to my client, that we understand what those stormwater fees are before we enter into that binding agreement.
Could that be calculated now because the impervious surface?
Yes, I would suggest that they contact, I believe the Public Works Director is here, but they. Yes, so at that point, and Martel School should have had some calculations done when it was operational, so you would have a model to look at.
So I just want to point out that's not something we can do.
Yeah, just for everybody's benefit, school property as well as city property pay stormwater fees.
And Administrator Barrett, do you have an opinion on the assessed value? Because I think we had a discussion.
Well, I had a discussion with the assessor, and he indicated that the existing value on that building probably does not reflect the actual value, given it's been tax exempt from day one and probably represents a number representing construction costs, or some other measure that's not a fair representation of market. He estimated the market value of the building at about $700,000, and I think that's the property and the building. And if the building was torn down, it'd be around $400,000, which is about the amount that's been. It is exactly the amount that's being proposed here.
Very good, thank you. Councilor Khalid, did you have a question?
Yes, thank you. Just one more question. The city of Lewiston, there's a lot of vacant spaces and, open locations. Have you looked in other places?
Yes, so I do quite a bit of business here in Lewiston, Auburn, and I would dare say I got a encyclopedia database going on in my head of all the vacant sites and all the redevelopable properties throughout the city. And because of its proximity on Lisbon Street and East Avenue and the visibility and whatnot, it lends itself very well to a commercial use. And what we would hope is that the zoning would reflect the zoning across the street at Promenade Mall and across the street where, like, Papa John's and Key Bank and Lewiston Mall is. That's what we would want it rezoned to allow those sort of uses that are across the street.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Pazik, are you willing to put some kind of language into an agreement that would specify the level and quality of development that we're talking about here?
I think that that's something that we could certainly discuss. Without handcuffing myself or into this, yeah, I think that that's something that we would be very much open to. You take a look at like what Mr. Gendron's done across the street with Paychecks going in and the redevelopment of the promenade, what's happened across the street there, and we're hoping to carry that on across the entire facade and have those sort of uses in that. I think that the quality of that development, I think, is indicative of what we're trying to do going forward.
Yeah, I just so you know where I'm coming from, I had a developer once guarantee us he was going to bring in a national chain restaurant to a site if we'd sell it to him. It was a Burger King.
I could say with 100% certainty that we are not going to put a Burger King on that corner.
Okay.
Not that there's anything wrong with Burger.
I've been known to be a customer.
We're not dissing anybody here. Councilor Khalid, did you have another question?
Yes, I had something. I forgot.
Any other questions or comments?
Oh, yes, I remember.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry. So, I'm wondering if the council, moves forward with your plan, is it possible for you to give us like a schedule by like when things will be developed and like, by the quality of the development?
If that's something that, if that's something that is of importance to the council, it's something that we can certainly negotiate. It isn't something that was part of the bid requirements, and our price offer is reflective of we have made that offer with no strings attached. I think that if there are stipulations that we would just need to work through those.
Anything else, folks? All right, thank you very much.
Great, thank you for having me.
Next, Lewiston Housing. Good evening.
Good evening, how are you?
Thank you.
So on behalf of Lewiston Housing and Avesta and Rebecca here today, I want to thank you for entertaining our proposal for the Martel School site. My name is Chris Kilmurray. I'm the new Executive Director of Lewiston Housing. So while Rebecca gets set up with the more development focus, I just wanted to quickly give a high-level thought of what Lewiston Housing's interest was in this site and why we think it's a quality site for senior affordable housing. So right now in Lewiston, there's really not a ton of high-quality senior-specific housing that's out there. There's specifically currently no straight tax credit housing for seniors that exists in Lewiston right now. So we have housing that can serve people that are at 30% or below median income, and we have housing for people that are in the market rate portion of that, but there's nothing that serves people in the 50 and 60% of median income bracket, which would represent those making around $22,700 for a 50% to $27,000, roughly $27,000 for 60% for a single, and $25,000 for two people, and $31,000 for two people in the 60%. So there's really a large gap there, and what that represents in rents is about $600 a month for a 50% person and around $700 a month for a 60%, whereas 30% is obviously based upon your income, that or below. And the market rate one that exists out there, not naming any names, is $960 a month for a single and $985 a month for a double. So there's a huge gap there that we don't have. So this site represents a really nice location that will serve a new group of people in the city. And it's also well positioned with the CVS, Urgent Care, Shaw's, Save-A-Lot, Sam's, just to name a few that are in walking distance, and it's on the bus line. And one last note before I pass it over to Rebecca is that I've heard recently that the seniors are very happy to have a senior center, but they're not necessarily enamored with the location of their senior center right now. And so one thing that we're trying to figure out if it's feasible within our proposal is to figure out how to work in a senior center into this proposal. We can't make any promises at this point because it came to us pretty late, but we are looking to see if there's any way we can fit that into the footprint of this site and make it work.
Okay, ma'am.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of the council. I'm Rebecca Hatfield. I'm the Vice President of Real Estate Development and Management for Avesta Housing. Avesta Housing, for those of you who don't know us, we're a nonprofit organization that was formed in 1972, and we are an affordable housing developer, owner, and manager. And as it pertains to the Martel School, we are partnering with Lewiston Housing Authority as a development consultant on their behalf. We're very excited to partner with them. I wanted to spend just a few slides giving you some context around our proposal and what we've done in the past, and then I'm going to kind of address the proposal that we submitted. Just to start, so Avesta has developed 130 properties since inception, creating over 3,500 homes. And in the last 10 years, we've done 6 historic rehabs of old schools. We've done other types of historic rehabs, but this is certainly, historic preservation is an area of expertise for our development team. an important part of what we do. We spend a lot of time working with communities. We understand that many residents have a deep connections to former schools, and so we work to redevelop these structures so they can continue to serve the community for many years to come. The buildings that you see here were all built between the 1890s and the 1920s, and they have varied approaches, which I'm going to dig into a little bit to show you some examples that are similar to Martel School. Some of them were just kind of a straight historic adaptive reuse. Some of them were rehabs of housing that existed in a former school before, and then some of them were actually a combination of historic preservation as well as new construction, which is what we're proposing for Martel School. The first example that I wanted to give you, this is Emory School. It's a 24-unit senior building, affordable housing property located in Biddeford. It was a circa 1912 building, and I wanted to show this just because this is an example of how we spend, when we do a historic preservation development, we really focus on restoring the historic facade of the building, and we want to bring it back to its original aesthetic. We also often replace all the windows to improve energy efficiency and building operations. And in this specific case, we were able to preserve many of the interior features. So things like blackboards, trim, wood flooring, cubbies, the layout of some of the multi-purpose spaces we turn into either community rooms or into units, which really helps preserve the character. Thought I would have learned my lesson. Yeah. There we go. Sorry. Yeah, thank you. And then just two more before I get to Martel School. These were two rehabs that we completed recently. On the left-hand side is Park Street School in Kennebunk, Maine. It's 30 units of senior housing. In this case, we did a historic renovation of a circa 1920s building, and we also did a newly constructed expansion on the back. We were able to convert the gymnasium into a community room as well as add several community garden beds in the back to encourage activity by the residents. And on the right side is Hyacinth Place, which is probably very similar to the approach we would take at Martel School. This was a renovation of two historic buildings, one that was built in 1893, one that was in 1921, and then we added a new building onto the site, and we worked very hard to keep a consistent, vibrant campus. So getting to Martel School, this was provided in our proposal. Similar to the previous examples that I've shown, we are proposing to preserve the front building, which is the school, and do a historic rehabilitation of the circa 1922 building. The classrooms would be renovated into apartment units, and the offices and multi-purpose spaces would be redeveloped into community areas. We would restore the facade of the building, and we would replace all of the building systems so that to make it more energy efficient and improve the building operations. This would require us to get the building placed on the National Historic Registry, and if for some reason the National Park Service did not feel like the building has maintained enough historical integrity to place it on the registry, we would then, our next option would be still to keep the front building, but just renovate it in place and still preserve as many features as we could. And at the very minimum, we would try and keep the front facade so we could keep the character of the school. On the green box on this map is where the newer portion of the school is. We are proposing to demo that portion of the school and construct a new 3-story building on roughly the same footprint. And then the last piece of our proposal is we do understand that the city would like to preserve the green space on the rear portion of the site, and we are happy to provide a recreation easement to the city so it can be continued to be used by the public. And then lastly, just to highlight some of the deal points in our proposal, What we've put together is an approximately $11.5 to $12 million capital investment into the site. We are proposing a 44-unit property for seniors that are 62 and older. 44 units is allowed within the current zoning, so we would not need a contract zone. We would focus on sustainability, energy efficiency, and accessibility, so the building would be entirely accessible. We would also incorporate universal design into units that are not fully accessible, so they're adaptable. We would bring the building back onto the tax rolls and pay full taxes on it. We are not seeking a TIF. And I think the only thing that we've asked for in the proposal is that if there's environmental remediation that needs to be done, that we would just ask that the city help us secure funds to complete that remediation. So that could be CDBG or home or brownfields, or there's several other sources. So with that, I just want to open it up for questions.
Questions? Councilor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Given the state of the school and like issues in the past with mold and it's non-ADA compliant, do you have any concerns going forward about the issue, or do you feel like you could get all those resolved and it won't come up again? Because I know in the school board, the district has had quite a difficult time keeping up with the building.
Yeah, I mean, we do this quite often whenever we go into former schools, that there's always some type of mold or asbestos, or the layout can be challenging because of the accessibility that doesn't currently exist. I feel comfortable that we can address those items, and we are very resourceful in finding funds, and we have architects that are used to doing this, so I feel comfortable that we can address all of those obstacles and hurdles in front of us.
Councilor Clements.
Can you commit to any kind of a timetable at this point in time?
So it's always hard to commit to a timetable. However, I believe what we propose and what our goal is, we would start aiming to secure funding this year in hopes that we would have secured all of the funding by the middle of next year, and we would start construction early in 2022. Now, I can't commit to it because it is a process because of the types of funds that we're using. They're competitive sources, so we have to apply for them. But our goal is to move as quickly as possible. Usually it takes 2 to 3 years just to secure the funding and start construction, and then a year to construct.
About a year of construction?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I would add, in the meantime, the Sheriff's Center could still utilize the building and utilize it for their current services, which
We
I
have
think
no
would be
objection.
a benefit to, we have no objection to that.
Councilor Jelinas.
Thank you. I think this question's for you, Chris. I'm curious to hear a little bit more about, the senior center potential. I think, supporting seniors aging in place is a big deal, and, a deal that this community needs to address for sure. So wondering if there's been any thought around partnerships. I mean, this is really an independent living situation.
Yep.
But I read the part about, just the accessibility, and you addressed that a little bit as well, Rebecca, around what the units would provide for the seniors. But I'm wondering if you could speak a little bit to those points.
Yeah, I mean, we're all about forming as many partnerships as possible. I don't want to make any promises that I can't back up. So all I can tell you is my goal is to get as many partners in here as possible to help provide as much of a vibrant living space and services for the seniors that are out there, which is why when I heard about the senior center need, it's a perfect fit for this location. If we can make it work financially, knowing that the city already has a service coordinator in place who works there, who would be on location, that in itself is a huge benefit to the residents that would be in this building. So, but our goal is always to bring in more services as possible as we move along.
Thank you.
Councilor Ray.
Thank you. Just for verification, Lewiston Housing Authority also administers the buildings on Marston Street, is that right?
Which buildings in particular? I'm so new, I don't even know the addresses of all my buildings, so
Okay.
I apologize about that. But we have mod contracts on a lot of buildings.
Okay.
And so we don't manage those buildings.
Okay.
We manage the contract associated with that. We have Hillview, Meadowview, and Bay Street Towers that we manage. And we
Okay.
also have a couple buildings down by the river, but we don't manage those properties. We just have the mod contract on them.
Okay. Someone had told me that last night. Weird. And then the only other thing was maybe for the Public Works Director. So two of the proposals tonight propose keeping the green space, and I know there were some issues with the playground equipment and use of that space. Could you just remind us what those were and how we might interact with these bids, knowing?
In fact, we were just having a conversation about that today. The playground equipment as it exists today is out of date, broken, and between that and refurbishment of the area, I think the estimate I had a while ago was around $25,000 to refurbish the playground and put it back in the condition it is today. We've also been talking about looking at CDBG, if it fits into the area, if the green space would be retained or have an easement to the city, maybe expanding or making that more park-like than just what's there today. So we're kind of waiting for how this all pans out so that we can kind of put a plan in place and look for some funding.
Okay, so the city would be responsible for that upkeep in the last two bids that we're looking at.
That
So we should keep
sounds
that
like
in our minds.
they're amenable to that, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We'd also be open to looking to do a Kaboom grant for the location as well. It's a fairly successful program that's out there for affordable housing providers and local municipalities to get, playground equipment in and bring the public together to put it in place. So that's something we could entertain while you're looking to try and resolve that as well.
Thank you.
Can you share a little bit about the current senior wait list for housing, if you have any information about that?
So we don't currently have any 50 or 60% housing right now at all. So I can't even speak to the number of people that are out there. What I can tell you is that Maison Marcotte, which is run by St. Mary's, has a market rate section of their housing, and they have a wait list for their units, which is pretty sizable. Again, I don't manage that property. I just sort of work tangentially with them, so I know that they have a wait list for that. But the wait list for people at 30% or below is dramatic for all income, all ages. So there's no shortage of people for the project-based units that would need to get in there. And then there just isn't even availability in that market right now for us to even have a wait list. But I'm quite confident that we will have absolutely zero issue finding people in the 50 and 60% income bracket that would want to take advantage of those apartments.
And do you think they'll be mostly Lewiston residents, or is that hard to say?
It's really hard to say. I mean, you'd hope that it would be a majority Lewiston residents, but come one, come all. If you apply for housing there, you'll be considered.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from councilors? Councilor Ray?
Just a comment that I really appreciate the care that was taken with this proposal, and also the fact that there is no TIF request that comes along with it. Is there any possibility that could surface later in the process?
I would have to say, doing as many developments as we've done, we have a pretty good idea when we originally underwrite it of the funding sources that we'll need. Now, that's not to say that doesn't change, but we try to be very transparent about that, and usually it doesn't change significantly. So the sources that I've provided you is generally what it will stay, and when we say there's going to be no contract zone and we're not going to request a TIF, it's not likely that we'll change and say we need a TIF. We will find another source that doesn't require a TIF. So that we will stick to, absolutely.
That's super helpful to have spelled out. Thank you.
Thank you. Good question.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, sir.
two quick questions. One from my finance director. Would you be willing to put in the deed that it would be a tax-paying property for perpetuity?
Issue with that?
Yeah, we've done it in the past, but that would be up to Chris and Lewiston Housing Authority.
Okay, and then the second one is, I know in your proposal you talked about the site and how you felt it was appropriate for seniors because of its location. I've also heard some people say that's an awful busy intersection. Maybe that's not an appropriate site. So I thought I'd give you a chance to talk a little bit more about that.
It's on the bus route, and you don't have to cross an intersection to get to Shaw's or CVS. So those three things right there are pretty powerful, I think. And then I think you have a pretty good system of a crosswalk system as well if people do decide they want to move across the street. But I think everything can be pretty well self-contained. And then there's also to say many of the seniors still drive, so they'll be able to drive in and drive out as they see fit.
And PW Director, if you could, just for a second. The width of the sidewalks around there, they seem pretty narrow for if it starts to get more heavily used. Are there any plans for that area for intersection safety?
They're on at this moment. That's one of the locations we talked about, poles, that we need to make some adjustments with, eventually with our partner, our utility companies. But at this moment in time, there are no alterations to sidewalks planned today.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And now I'll welcome the Share Center once the table's clear. No rush. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to give a presentation on with our letter of interest and not the traditional request for proposal. I hope I do razzle dazzle you all. So I'd like to start the presentation by introducing that our Share Center's vision for Martel School is to make it a Dr. Martel Share Center multipurpose community hub. Dr. Martel, for whom the school was named after, was very active in the local community. His hard work and dedication to the needs of the local citizens was seen in many areas of Lewiston. Louis J. Martel was born in St. Hyacinthe, Quebec, Canada. Dr. Martel came to live and practice medicine in Lewiston, Maine in 1873. He became a naturalized citizen of the United States in 1879 and urged his fellow countrymen to do the same, frequently helping them financially to do so. Dr. Martel was the founder of the Institut Jacques Cartier, an organization which helped immigrants of French extradition to settle in Lewiston. The citizens of Lewiston urged city officials to name this school in honor of Dr. Martel. They hoped that Martel's examples would serve as an inspiration to the students of this school, that they too would devote some part of their lives to the betterment of this city and its residents. Our vision is to continue to honor Dr. Martel's dedication to helping immigrants and educators in our community by making Martel School a multipurpose community hub. My name is Lisa Rodriguez, by the way. I am the director of Share Center.
Thank you.
What is Share Center? Share Center helps the environment, educators, and the economy. We are a completely self-funded program, but are a subset of the Auburn Public School Department established over 20 years ago. We accept donations of reusable items such as classroom supplies, arts and crafts supplies, STEM materials, office supplies, office, household, and school furniture, electronics, and much more. We redistribute hundreds of thousands of dollars of valuable materials to our members across Maine yearly. Our members are made up of schools and other nonprofits that pay a small minimum annual fee based on their criteria. Then their staff is allowed to shop for items for their organization at no additional cost throughout the school year. By reusing, upcycling, and repurposing items that may have otherwise made their way into overcrowded landfills, we indeed help the helpers in our Maine communities. Supporting the environment, education, and economy is rewarding to all, and a true win-win. What are Share Center's current status and achievements? Share Center has successfully expanded over the past 2 years. Our budget is primarily made up of our membership fees, but we also may raise monies through fundraisers, sales, and grants. I am very proud to say I have kept us in the black, staying well within our budget while also continuing to grow. But our biggest obstacle now is trying to acquire enough space and a permanent home to gather and distribute our donations to our members. In the short time Share Center has occupied Martel, I've heard from many people in the community that have some sentimental connection with the school, either as a teacher or a student. Nearly everyone I speak with expresses his or her hope that Martel School will be retained and restored to serve a much-needed, valued community service. We've had generous donations. Some examples are Brunswick and Lewiston Staples stores have chosen Share Center to be recipients of their school supply drives and have been collecting brand-new items for us since August, easily exceeding $10,000 in valued merchandise. Share Center recently was honored to receive a $40,000 grant from the Stephen and Tabitha King Foundation for a box truck to help transport donations. Having this truck will allow us to rescue even more valuable items and distribute them into the hands of people who need them. We were recently nominated for the Maine Environmental Education Association Ally of the Year Award. We receive merchandise weekly from Crestline, such as water bottles, journals, backpacks, pens, clothing, shirts, electronics, reusable bags, which the food programs love, just to name a few examples. Peter Geiger is very much a supporter of Share Center's mission and our vision for Martel School. Auburn and Lewiston schools alone have gathered materials valued over $90,000 in just a few months of our 2019-2020 school year. Our gratitude to the City of Lewiston. Share Center is very thankful to the City of Lewiston to allow us to house our large items at Martel. One example is we were able to receive $23,000 worth of donated brand-new virtual reality equipment from a local company that needed to make space in their warehouse. Bowdoin College has donated 12 16-foot tractor trailers full of furniture, appliances, and metal shoveling to us since July, and continues to be thankful to have an organization like Share Center to donate their items. CMHS donated 6 skids full of beautiful plastic organizing bins. We recently received about 100 sturdy plastic pallets. TD Bank donated 200 beautiful 2-drawer file cabinets. Kevin Bunker, owner of the now closed Maine Girls Academy, just donated classrooms full of furniture, school supplies, science lab materials, cafeteria tables, and smart boards to us. This is just a sampling of how valuable the space at Martel has been to Share Center and its thousands of members it serves each year since June of 2019. Without Martel, we would have had to turn these donors away, and nearly all of these valuable items would have been thrown away. Our members have been extremely excited and appreciative of the convenience of the location and the prospect of Martel possibly becoming a community hub. They express daily how necessary they feel the need for a multi-functioning, community-focused center is in that area of Lewiston. The close proximity to the adjacent green space playground is ideal for Lewiston schools and other organizations within the Twin Cities. Because we serve multiple communities and organizations across Maine, Share Center brings people from other towns and cities to Lewiston, who then eat or shop at other local businesses. I truly believe if we're allowed to build it, more of them will come. A possible collaboration. I have met with the Lewiston Recreation Directors, and they are very interested in forming a collaboration with the Share Center to help develop a community hub. The gymnasium would be an ideal opportunity for them to expand their programs, along with the already established kitchen. Some of the programs, such as after-school programs, there isn't a current Boys and Girls Club in Lewiston. The summer program, their sports programs, and a senior center program. The playground would be a perfect area for the rec department to use, and there would be little that would need to be done immediately for it to be used now, with a 5-year plan to upgrade and renovate as needed. Sharing the space and expenses, again, would be a true win-win. The directors of the rec department, we also discussed the option of renting the classroom spaces in the older section of the building for multi-use. Retail offices, dance classes, yoga, paint nights, maker space, maker's market, the revenue, and then the revenue from that space would create more monies for maintenance and growth. As of right now, we have an offer from Day One. It's a day school that's very interested in renting and occupying a classroom in the basement of the original building, just the way it sits. We could have instant revenue. If Share Center were to become part of the City of Lewiston and break away from the Auburn School Department, Auburn School Department would agree to pay an annual membership fee to Share Center that would be somewhere around $10,000 a year. And then should be in your packet, but I'd like to, if possible, read off the list of the communities and the organizations that we do serve and support. all of the Auburn School Departments, Acadia Academy in Lewiston, Bright Start in Topsom, Buckfield Junior Senior High, Central Maine Christian Academy, Clover Preschool, Community Concepts, Family Services, Children's Services, Housing and Energy, Transportation, CCFC and Corporate, Creative Work Systems, T.W. Dirigo Middle School, Hornville Charter School in Skowhegan, Gartley School in Lisbon, Green Central School, Harpswell Arts Academy, Hebron Academy, John F. Murphy, La Petite Ecole, Leeds Central School, the City of Lewiston, Lewiston Public Schools, Lewiston Rec Department, Marana Cook Middle School, Margaret Murphy, Mountain Valley High School, Mountain Valley Middle School, Mount Ararat Middle School, New Mainers Health Initiative, North Elementary Skowhegan, Oak Hill Middle School, Poland Regional High School, Promise Daycare, Renaissance School, Rumford Elementary, RSU 2, which includes Dresden Elementary, Halldale Elementary, Halldale Middle, Halldale High, Henry Cottrell, Marcia Bucher, Monmouth Middle, Monmouth Academy, Richmond Middle, and Richmond High, St. Dom's, St. Mary's Adult and Adolescents, Snow Pond Arts Academy, Southern Kennebec Child Development, Spurwink Support Solutions, Tri-County Mental Health, Trinity Jubilee, Trip Middle, Trusted Souls, Adult Daycare, Turner Adult Education, Turner Elementary, Turner Primary, Whittier House, and Woodside Elementary. So that pretty much concludes what I have, and I thank you again for allowing me to give the presentation.
Thank you so much. Questions, comments from the council? Councilor Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just the first question I have is if the building needed any maintenance, like mold came up, again, something was going on with it, would the city have to pay for it, or would Chair Center have the funds themselves to cover that?
Well, I actually did the walkthrough with the city on the 7th, and that was one of the questions that I asked. I said, what is the mold issue? Because I've heard so much about there. And they showed me down in the basement that's where the issue was, and that it had been, the remediation had been done, and that there was no longer a mold issue. And the asbestos, I was told, was something that was self-contained, and that really wouldn't be an issue unless things were to be taken apart. The hope and the goal is to, again, if we generate enough revenue between grants and looking out to other funding, I've reached out to Community Concepts, and they've included a list of different funding options for us. And I've talked with Lincoln Jeffers, and he said that there would probably be funds out there that could help with those type of projects as well.
Have you gotten a chance to talk to the facilities director for the school department regarding the building?
Is the facilities director Louis
Josh
Turco?
Bro.
That's for the city.
Oh, who is it?
Josh Bro.
Oh, Josh Bro he's the Lewiston School Facilities Director.
Right. He's just very familiar with the building and all the issues that went into it in its last year of use. So I know he'd be a good resource. I didn't know if you'd spoken with him yet.
I haven't spoken with him about that. Again, I have looked over the, what was included in for the walkthrough and all the different testing that has been done to the building. Yeah.
And last question I have is, you may not know it, but do you know how much Auburn pays annually for the Share Center space, and including any work that's been done on the building?
For the space at Martel, or at the space, right?
The space in Auburn.
The space in Auburn. So right now, we work on an in-kind basis with the Auburn School Department, where they're our fiscal agent, and we actually have, we have 2 small rooms in the bus depot of the school department. And another reason why it's been so critical to move into Martel is because we've lost so much space. Last fall, we lost 7 storage units that had been donated to us in Turner. We lost all of those and had to try to find space and rent a pod to hold some of these our materials. That wasn't convenient, but we were trying to salvage as much as we could. And then we had furniture and some items at the Bates Mill complex, which they very generously let us borrow. But with all the new construction that's been going on there, where we had space for furniture, they were actually coming in with saws and breakers, and so we had to move out of that. So it was because of those two factors that I reached out to Josh at the Lewiston school facilities and asked him if we could use the space at Martel, because we had tractor trailers full of furniture that was coming from Bowdoin and other donors, that I just could not see all of that be thrown away. And I knew that Martel was gonna be an empty space, and we just hoped, at least for a temporary, it would be something that would work. But now that we're in there, you can see how it could function as so many other multi-purposes.
Those were all the questions I had. Just, would it be possible to get a statement from maybe the school system and maybe even Louis Turcotte about about the current state of the facility and what the recommendation would be about the city taking ownership of it?
We could,
Term.
yes.
Okay. That would help my decision come vote.
Has the city already done that on our behalf?
We have not done a full analysis of what it would cost for us to own and operate that facility. We have, obviously, Louis Turcotte has been very familiar with the building and was knowledgeable about the issues that the school department ran into. The biggest problem with the building is most likely the age of a lot of its core facilities and core systems that at some point are going to require some significant upgrading. As you can imagine, the school department, knowing it was going to be leaving that building, was a little reticent to do any major investments. They obviously had the mold problem jump up on them, and they had to deal with that. But I suspect that anyone going into that building is going to pretty much be looking at roofs and HVAC systems and water system. The whole systems probably need at this point to be looked at and upgraded.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments?
And I'm hoping that because of our nonprofit status, that's where we can actually look out to grants and different options. I know that eventually it's gonna probably need a new heating system, and because we're so environmentally conscious, the hope is to look for grants for maybe solar energy or alternative energies to what is being used now as well.
Thank you. Councilor Khalid?
So quick question. So does this Share Center get these items from either Bowdoin or from other, organizations for free?
We do. These items, it's kind of an incredible concept that really works. So most of the times, it's through different things. A lot of the businesses, they're upgrading in their offices, but they still have beautiful office furniture, and they hate the thought of throwing it away, and so they donate it to us. We get items because a company is rebranding, and so they may have thousands of water bottles that they no longer use because it doesn't have the same brand of the company that they're going to have. We have a lot of individuals that support us as well, again, they still see the value in something, but they no longer have a use for it and hate the thought of filling up a landfill and throwing it away.
Thank you. So in schools, some schools are, members of Share Center?
Yeah.
Can teachers get items for free, school supplies and stuff?
So the way that Share Center works, we work on a membership basis. So each school and organization pays a certain annual fee based on their criteria. Like for schools, it's $2 per child and only $2.25 per staff for the entire school year, and then all of the staff can come and shop for free at no additional charge. And they can gather everything from pencils and crayons to office furniture and lamps and computers and whatever we have available to them.
So, I'm thinking about local centers too. For example, the Trinity Center. I know they, help homeless people, and even, community members can do you help those locations?
We do. Trinity Jubilee is a member of Share Center. And we have clothing and all kinds of different items. One story, one thing I'd like to share with you is New Mainers Health Initiative. They came in and were able to get 13 beds from us. Hebo Amur came in and said that was thrilled to be able to take those beds because she had people that were sleeping on the floor, and we were able to give them all those beds. We have, I don't know if you've had an opportunity to read our letters of support. If I had more time, I would have read through all of them. But it's, this is really an inspiring job for me, and that we've been able, lots of times, not even the things that we have on hand, but we become a transfer station where we're able to connect with businesses, schools, and organizations that don't want to throw things away. We can make a direct connection with the schools or the other nonprofits that are in need. Happy Haven was one example where Bowdoin College had 22 beds. They were able to gather 22 beds, 22 dressers, 22 student desks directly that would have cost them thousands and thousands of dollars, but we made that connection for them.
Thank you. Councilor Ray?
Thank you. How much does the city of Lewiston or LPS pay for membership currently?
Lewiston Public Schools currently pays that $2 per student and $2.25 per staff. And the city of Lewiston right now, we're,
Total would be for that?
I think that it was around $12,000 this year. Yeah.
And does Auburn Public Schools currently pay in at all, or is the deal in exchange for being the fiscal agent?
It's in the fiscal agent and having the space that we currently have our Auburn Share Center in. Plus, we also have access. I have to tell you that the Auburn School Department, their facilities department and maintenance department has been wonderful. If we need to go pick something up, if we need some bodies, because I can only lift so much, they're always extremely helpful to us as well.
Okay. I think the one comment that I'm mulling over is it's not exactly an apples to apples with what Auburn is currently doing versus what Lewiston would be asked to do in this process, given that there are such ambitious, and rightly so, plans for the Share Center. And so I'm just trying to reconcile that in my mind. Can I ask Finance Director Hunter a question?
Sure.
About this, because you would be the one weighing in on being the fiscal agent, and just am wondering if you have anything to share with us.
Not at this juncture.
Fine too.
I would have to see what the model looks like and you know, the profitability, looking at probably some kind of capital reserve fund, those types of things, in order to make sure there's some sustainability there.
Ask one more question of her. Do we have this model set up with any other organization, a nonprofit, and we serve as the fiscal agent?
Yes, I serve as the fiscal agent for Franklin Pasture Trustees, the former bandstand project, Pettingill Park. Pettingill, for some reason that didn't sound right to me. Yes, the Pettingill Park. And I know we've done back and forth with the seniors. Now they're pretty much all at the rec department, and Cheryl's handling that now. So those are probably the direct ones, the city's
There's a
involvement
model
at them.
we could look at. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Clement?
I see the value in your program. I do have one concern, however. I'm hearing, as the presentations are going around, and having been involved in some rehab projects through the years, I see what I think would be a major concern for you, probably 6 or 7 figures worth of rehabbing that's going to need to be done to that building. And are you prepared to take something like that on? I mean, the idea of grants and everything like that are wonderful if you can get them. But if you need a heating system, it's November, you don't have the money, you know.
Well, again, that's one thing that I did try to do a little bit of research. Everything has happened so quickly here. And I do feel pretty confident that there are resources out there. Like I said, there's a whole list that Community Concepts has given me for resources, and I asked specifically for weatherization type resources, and that there could be funding through Link Jeffers as well. But in the meantime, because the way that the building sits right now and it's usable right now, I think even now we could start generating revenue that could form some type of a fund for emergencies and maintenance going forward.
I think one of the earlier presentations was a mention that they might be 2 or 3 years before they could start to develop, but in the interim, they would be amenable to you utilizing the building as a share center.
That was
So
very
you-
generous.
So you would have, a heads up as to when you might have to vacate if that should be coming to fruition. Would that be something that you could work with somebody with if that were to come about?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Counselor Jensen?
Yes, no question. Just as a public school employee, wanted to thank you for all that you do for the many communities that you do serve. My roommate is a teacher over at EL, and he's very appreciative of the Share Center. So thank you for all that you do.
Thank you so much. It's a very rewarding job.
I just want to make a comment as well. I appreciate just the thoroughness of your presentation, all the letters that you attached, all the information that you gave. You did a great job. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, any other questions or comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone.
So the council will be moving to a sidewalk plow route adjustment, but I don't suspect most people are here to listen to that, so we'll give it just a moment before we begin.
These are really important questions, folks.
Kill the move, all right, doesn't it?
Deal comes forward, everyone leaves.
Comes with the territory.
You should think of going into law enforcement, clear a room like this.
That's interesting. Interesting, thank you.
How are you, sir?
Great. How about you?
Introduce yourself, take it away.
Yes, I'm Dale Dowdy. I'm the Public Works Director. And if you think this is exciting, wait till next time. We're going to talk about spring posted roads. That's another scintillating topic. I came a couple weeks ago to talk a little bit about sidewalk plowing and how the city approaches it and some of the limitations and some of the expansion. We've had several requests for expansion of our sidewalk plow routes, and I kind of want to go back over those with you. We'll get some feedback, and then we'll come back with resolve in the next council meeting. In your packet, you have a memo from me to the administrator, and there's a couple routes there with some maps. The first one is Mollison Way. We talked about that last time. On Mollison Way, there used to be a bus stop. The bus route has changed. The bus will now stop at Main Street, and so patrons that either work or frequent the businesses will now need to walk along Mollison Way. There's also a fair amount of recreation on Mollison Way, lunchtime walking and things like that. I presented 2 possibilities to you last time. One was to do a trade-off with another route and bring a sidewalk plow and sander up there. The other one was, because it's fairly open and the curb's fairly low, is to actually do with a wing of the street plow. Since we met last time, we've done that a number of times. That's actually working out quite well. And I guess I would propose not a trade-off, but just to continue that this winter. If that continues to provide a good level of service, that we would just continue into that next winter. If for some reason it doesn't, before next winter, we'll come back and chat about how we get that done. So again, I just suggest we continue to do that with a street plow. Holland Street should have come to the council some time ago. Apparently, trying to be helpful, Public Works, we did a little swap down there when Durgo Federal Credit Union rebuilt their facility. And as you'll see on the map, we're currently plowing the north side of Holland Street in that area. And again, as part of that resolution, I just want to formalize that. That way it's formally adopted by the council as a sidewalk plow route. It's working out quite well, I think.
Can I ask a question on that?
Yes.
So how did this come to our attention again if we had already been plowing that side?
We got a request to do it, and we got anxious and started before we came to you. So we got a request
I
from
see what's
Jericho.
happening.
Yes.
Okay, I was like, well,
Trying
if it's
to
not being
please.
cleared properly, then.
Yes.
Okay, I see,
yes,
thank you.
yes, yeah. And I just trying to do the right thing. I think we kind of got ahead of ourselves a little bit, but we just want to get, so if you went out today, I just want you to go out today and say, geez, Dale, that's plowed, and you're asking us to approve it, so that's why I wanted to bring it to your attention. Park Street, we got a request to plow the opposite side of Park Street. If you look at all the cross streets, if you kind of look at the tree streets in the downtown area, we plow both sides of those because those are kind of the spiral out of the hub. The cross streets, we tend to plow one side. Again, trying to offer as much service as we possibly can. At the same time, trying to conserve and get around in some reasonable manner. I think we talked last time that a medium-sized storm, it might take 2 to 3 days to clear the sidewalks. And so we're trying to do that efficiently. The request was to plow the other side of Park Street. Right now, I think Public Works would recommend that that is the best side to plow, the one we're doing today for obstructions and other reasons. And at this point, we would recommend that we continue to do what we're doing on Park Street. A similar request for Bradley Street, and under the same circumstances, I know Councilor Ray had an inquiry a year or two ago on this same route. Although with the snow on the ground, I couldn't see the obstructions that the former Public Works Director saw, but I'm sure they're there. Again, that we're plowing one side of Bradley Street. We think we should continue. We can evaluate which side makes more sense, but right now that seems to make the most sense, is to continue with that. Riverside Street, out on Main Street, if you turn left onto Riverside Street, you go down there a little ways, AmeriGas is in there. We got a request from a gentleman who is next to the school bus stop. His concern is the AmeriGas trucks coming in and out and children getting to the bus stop and then having a place to wait for the bus. We would like to do that. The difficulty is, and you can see, I included a photo, there are several along the street where it is very narrow. There's a kind of a delicate cedar fence on one side and a tree with a root splay on the other. I think what we'd like to do is try to do that, to pilot that the next few months. Again, it's the reason we'd like to, it's really it's a bus stop, it's a school, pedestrian pathway to get to the bus stop, and with the trucks on that specific street and the number of trucks, we'd like to try. So I guess with your permission, we would give that a swing for a few weeks. I'm not sure it's going to be successful, but we'd like to at least give it a try. We are investigating a couple routes that have changed the other way that we may come back at some point when we do have an exchange. We'll build a little portfolio of routes and do some investigation on how much traffic there are. So that's the update I promised you a couple weeks ago.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments? Councilor Ray?
On the Riverside Street, have we talked to the transportation director from the schools?
I haven't yet.
Is that bus stop
This just-
appropriately placed if it's right on a parking lot with big trucks, I wonder?
Yeah, we will chat with him.
Okay.
We'll have that conversation, because I suspect we're going to be unsuccessful
Okay.
as much as we'd like to, but
Okay.
there may be a way to put it. There's several cross streets, and then maybe one of the other cross streets would be a better location
Yeah,
for the bus
that
stop.
might be better.
Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely.
Okay. Councilor Jensen?
Sorry, just checking out the map here.
Yeah.
Looking at the Park Street suggestions, was the request for the side where, like the Acme Club is on?
Yeah, if you headed back towards my office, head back towards Adams Avenue, you'd go by the Acme Club, and there are a couple of brick apartment buildings right there on that side. And the gentleman I spoke to was really the building manager, the property manager, and what he was requesting, he said, I saw the other side plowed, I was just wondering if I could get my side plowed, and I explained to him that we do this, on the cross streets, we do one side, we tend to try to do the side that's most, that provides us the most clearance, but also if you look at the side we do plow, there are many more apartment buildings on that side, so I think we serve more people. It is a relatively easy street to cross, too, given some of the others we talked about today.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Councilor Khalid?
I would like to make a motion to enter into an executive session pursuant to MRSA Title I, Section 4056C, to discuss real estate negotiations of which the premature disclosure of the information would prejudice the competitive bargaining position of the city.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Khalid, seconded by Counselor Ray. All in favor? Thank you.
Right, yeah.
So